And as I mentioned before, an important aspect of the modern Victorian coroner is the recommendation power. It's a distinguishing feature of our jurisdiction as well as New Zealand and Canada. And we can make recommendations in the interest of public health and safety. Those recommendations are required to be published as part of our findings, and the party that they're directed to is required to respond within 3 months, and that response is also published and placed on the internet. And I just thought that I would very, very briefly refer to a couple of cases that you might find interesting where recommendations have been made by the coroner. If anyone's a bike rider here, you might recall a case in 2010 where a young man was riding and a woman opened her car door, and unfortunately the man was forced under a Mack truck and died. And there was an inquest into his death that looked at those circumstances of his death, but also the interaction between cars and cyclists and the risks posed for cyclists by car door hazards. There was an inquest that was held for 1 day that heard from experts in the area, and recommendations were made ultimately, which one was about relocating bike lanes to the left of parked cars, and there's an example of a street in East Melbourne where that occurs, and also public awareness campaigns. And anyone driving down Chapel Street today would be aware that there's signs everywhere about looking out for bikes and be careful of opening car doors. The other example I wanted to very briefly tell you about was the Westgate Bridge. Now, the Westgate Bridge was completed in 1978. It's a 2.5 kilometre bridge, and its highest point is 58.5 metres. And for many, many years, there were continual coronial recommendations about barriers being put up because the barrier that was put up when the bridge was built was waist high, and a lot of people would take their life by jumping over the bridge. In 2009, temporary safety barriers were erected, and they were finalised in 2012. So barriers are now up on the bridge. You can see they're over 3 metres in height. They're angled at a particular way, so you can't get a foot or a hand hold, and they've also got, they're curved inwards at the top. And the figures show that between 2000 and 2009, there were 98 suicides, which is effectively 11.8 per year. From 2009, which is when the safety barriers, the temporary ones, were erected, to 2012, there were 6 suicides, which was 1.9 a year. And then since the completion of the final barriers, in June 2012 to December 2014, there's been no suicides at all. And so that's an example of a public health and safety initiative, and it's very significant because research shows that a lot of people do tend to take their lives on impulse, and so removing the opportunity for them to do so in a very simple way has been highly effective. There's just 2 other very quick cases I want to refer to if I've got time. This is a suburban beach of Melbourne, and involves a case that I've recently dealt with involving a young primary school aged child who drowned while he was having an afternoon at the beach with some friends, and during the summer holidays a number of years ago. And I became aware during the course of the investigation that there was a lot of public awareness campaigns raised, particularly in respect of toddlers, the 0 to 4. You would have seen the ads, it takes 20 seconds for a toddler to drown. But I was somewhat surprised to learn that swimming lessons aren't a compulsory part of the school curriculum. And this young boy died as he couldn't swim. And they're not a compulsory part of the school curriculum, despite the fact that drowning is the highest cause of death of children aged between 0 and 14 years. And so a recommendation that's come out of that investigation is that there be consideration that, and adopting Lifesaving Victoria's position that swimming lessons should be a compulsory part of the school curriculum. And then just very finally, a current case that is under investigation is a man who's died as a result of a snake bite whilst working in central Victoria as a gardener. And there's an issue in that case regarding the delivery of the ampules of anti-venom and what the current guidelines say is the appropriate amount. And it might well be that a doctor in Victoria might never see a snake bite in their whole professional life. So something like guidelines on this topic are very, very important if they come across it. And there's a conflict in the expert evidence in that case that might well lead to an inquest. So I think you'll see from these examples that the inquisitorial process really is essential to the coroner's role, being an independent and objective investigator of death, as I said at the outset, to protect the living. Thank you.